At this point, we return to the 7-stage generic infrastructure development model. By now, you already know what's most important to the developer at each stage of the infrastructure development process. But why is it important to us as auditors? We'll now look at the rules and regulations that infrastructure projects have to abide by at different stages of project development and operation, and how a government can influence this process at various stages of the project. From our own experience, we'll also point out what auditors should be particularly aware of at each stage. The government provides a framework for infrastructure development as a whole through general taxation policy, various laws, and other governing processes, including impact assessment. The wider regulatory context influences all 7 stages of any given project's life cycle. Development, use, and decommissioning of infrastructure are all governed by regulatory framework, which includes environmental regulations. As an auditor, you should be familiar with general legal framework. Laws, international agreements, and regulations are a good source of audit criteria. At the same time, it's important to bear in mind that performance audits can also analyze whether the legislative framework is sufficient to ensure the sustainable, economical, and environmentally friendly development, operation, and decommissioning of infrastructure. For the developer of a project, the main activity at this stage is conducting a cost-benefit analysis, or CBA. For the government, however, it is important that all of the planning procedures carried out at this stage are in accordance with the law. Planning procedures are regulated by governments, and developers need to abide the law. The planning phase also involves environmental or sustainability assessments, which determine whether it's even possible to develop the infrastructure project at the chosen location, when taking social, economic, and environmental considerations into account. At this stage of the project, auditors can check, for example, whether the developer has followed all the planning procedures, involved local citizens and the relevant stakeholders in the process, and determine potential environmental impact. Later on in the course, we'll also be providing an example of using environmental impact assessment reports in auditing. The design phase gives the contractor or supervisor the opportunity to influence the environmental and sustainability performance of infrastructure development. The design phase is key in identifying construction materials and methods that will help achieve sustainability targets. Decisions taken at this stage can minimize any adverse impact identified in earlier assessments and seek to enhance any potentially positive impact. During this stage, the technical solutions are put in place, contracts are signed, and procurement procedures are carried out. In most countries, there are procurement laws that need to be followed. Regarding major infrastructure projects from the auditor's point of view, the conditions under which the government signs contracts with the developer is important, as well as how the procurement procedure is carried out. With contracts and procurement, there's always a risk of corruption. We won't elaborate on this topic during the course, but it's still worth keeping it in mind. The operations of any infrastructure object must adhere to the law and to conditions set during the planning phase. For example, in most countries, there are limits on the permitted levels of contamination of water, air, and soil, as well as for waste management. Most countries have also developed systems for monitoring environmental impact. On top of that, the closure and decommissioning of infrastructure should be regulated by law. Further on in the course, we'll be giving you an audit example on this topic. In general, environmental audits on infrastructure can have a wide or a narrow focus. A wider focus can include auditing how effective the government has been at setting rules for infrastructure development, or whether the environmental assessment and monitoring system guarantees a clean environment as well as infrastructure that takes people's needs into account. When taking a more narrow view, you can focus on a specific project development and analyze whether, for example, potential environmental damage has been determined and effective measures for avoiding or at least minimizing it have been put in place. Auditors can also look at how effectively environmental impact is during the operating stage or how environmental safety is ensured during closure and decommissioning. Furthermore, we can audit how effective the maintenance of infrastructure is, as the National Audit Office of Estonia did in our audit of the effectiveness of road maintenance.